tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is conductor Victor Vener and KCET anchor Val Zavala. Music director, conductor Victor Vener founded the California Philharmonic Orchestra in 1996. He has a Bachelor of Music in Horn Performance and Music Literature from USC. He has a Master's of Music in Opera conducting, also from USC, my alma mater, by the way. I'm so happy you were there. And a Doctor of Musical Arts, also from SC. He studied orchestra management, guest conducted in China and Austria and the Netherlands. Victor, you didn't stay so close to home. You went out and did some stuff, and then you came back.
That's right.
What were you doing?
I'm a Pasadena-born boy, and spent all the way through USC.
Right here in Southern California, but you were out doing different things, right?
But then all of a sudden somebody opened the back door, and I took off for Canada, Europe, and spent a number of years abroad, then came back and worked on my master's, and taught for a while, and went back to Europe again, and came back, and I've been happily at home ever since '76 in Southern California.
I was going to say 96 when you founded the orchestra. But did you come from a musical family?
Well, I came from what I'd call a naturally musical family. My mother loved to sing. My father played a number of instruments. He'd actually fought in World War I and went into the Navy as a musician and came out as a cook.
Is that right?
But he loved to play musical instruments, loved all sorts of music. But the person that was really my mentor was my older brother. He's 15 years my senior, and he was physically challenged, but mentally and musically very bright. And he took me under his wings, and he really introduced me to classical music. And
did he write?
No, he played the trumpet.
So that's why you like the horn?
Didn't even play the trumpet very well. I had a terrible sense of rhythm, but he loved music.
Oh, so that was the thing. It all came out in you.
He just taught me to love it, and all of a sudden, boom, there it was.
Was he happy that it came through you and that he was able to be successful in that regard?
Oh, absolutely. He was successful in many, many regards, but my relationship with him was primarily musical.
And what about the commitment to organizing an orchestra? You've worked with a lot of orchestras, but I think the interesting thing is that you are the artistic director of California Philharmonic. It is a world-renowned orchestra. What kind of commitment did you have to have to
100%.
start it?
100%. It's really simple. Goethe said this at one point, the German philosopher, said that when someone is truly committed to something, all manner of people and things will come forward to assist that.
Oh, that's great.
And that most failures are due to lack of commitment and simply trying. So that being kind of my mantra, that this orchestra is my mountain and I will either climb it or die trying, is the way I approached it.
So was it always the mountain there for you to climb? Were you always thinking about it?
Well, I'm a product of 3 months early. 3 months later, and I would have been a baby boomer, but I'm actually a World War II child.
But does that make a difference?
Absolutely, because we grew up with a, I believe it's firmly, there is quite a psychological difference between the war and pre-war people and the post-war people, the boomers, in that there was this, you've always got to be better, you've got to achieve, good enough isn't, good is the enemy of great. And so there's this kind of drive that goes on. And Cal Phil's not my first orchestra that I founded from scratch.
Oh, it isn't?
No, no. As a 25-year-old, I was a music professor in Texas. And I arrived there having just gotten my master's in conducting, and I was opera conducting. And so I was going to conduct the operas. I was going to, well, sure, you're going to be the conductor of the orchestra. I went to my first class. There were 8 people there.
So you think these
And
8
I'm
people
thinking,
are going to?
well, if I don't come up with 12 people, they're going to cancel the class.
Oh, I see.
So,
I thought you meant 8 were going to be conducting the same orchestra.
No, there were 8 in the entire orchestra.
Oh, is that right?
A trumpet, a couple of fiddles,
you
a string
needed
bass.
more.
Yeah, I was a little short.
I see.
It's a few sandwiches short of a picnic, okay?
Exactly.
And here I am in Texas, Mr. Liberal Pasadena boy, in East Texas, and I just said, well, you know, we'll just start a college community orchestra. We'll put it in the evening instead of at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I found Juilliard graduates running the piano store. I found people 30 miles away in Louisiana that had worked with the New York City Opera. And 6 weeks later, I conducted a concert with 80 people.
Otherwise, you never would have gotten it,
never
right?
would have
You had to get out into the community and find them.
You want it, you got to do it.
The thing is, that wasn't your first conducting job. How old were you when you first conducted?
Well, that was actually my first conducting. I was a high
job,
school,
I shouldn't say.
I became a professional French horn player at 17, and at 17 I became the student conductor of the high school choir in Pasadena.
Oh, you did?
But as a professional conductor, my first job was in Texas at 25. And my first professional orchestra was the Beaumont Symphony at 25.
Is that right?
The week before a concert, I substituted for somebody, and it was
That's great.
very cute. Beaumont had all 3 networks, so they literally walked into the concert hall with network affiliates and their cameras in the middle of a Beethoven symphony, and the cameras grinding away. It was really pretty.
Oh, that's great.
So I was a big fish in a little pond.
But only a young kid could do that with all that distraction around him.
Telling you,
What does it take to be a conductor? What do you have to? Do you have to play an instrument? Do you have to know how to read music?
Yeah. I would say that you want the honest answer? You don't have to be able to do anything. If you're a great mime, if you stand up and wiggle your arms around, and there's a standard joke. You look to the left, the violins are left, cellos are right, wave your arms till the music stops, and turn around and bow. To be a conductor doesn't require much. To be a good conductor requires an awful lot. And so certainly, certainly as the master of the music, and in my particular case, I'm dealing with, and this is not an exaggeration, world-class, some of them world-recognized artists on their instruments. And I have to stand up in front of them, many of them with earned doctorates and masters in music, and tell them, hey, do it my way. So
how do you get them all to play together? How do you get a world-class cello and a world-class violin? I mean, and they make beautiful music. It's, you know, it's pretty amazing when you sit in a concert and you're conducting, I'll hold this up, and everybody's playing together and making beautiful music.
Well, here's how it works. It's really simple. Each person in the orchestra has a function. Some of them follow the people in front of them. Some of them lead. They have their own sections they're responsible for. But my job is to say, look, there are many right ways to play this music. Music is not a finite deal where it is exactly this. Louder means, what's louder mean? How much louder? My job is to convince them that regardless of how correct they might be or their teachers may have been, and they're coming from Armenia, from the Soviet Union, from South America, from Asia, from Europe, and from Los Angeles, to say your teachers were right, you're right, there are many right ways, but my job as the conductor is to choose which right way we're going to do it tonight. So they have to then submerge their ideas of correctness, and it's my knowledge, willpower, and drive that gets them to say, okay, Victor, we give, we'll play it your way.
You have you have the music in front of you. I mean, do you use music? And the orchestra members have their music. All those music what do you call them?
The
Pieces
scores,
of music, musical scores are all different, aren't they?
That's right. The French horn player has the part of music that the French horn sounds. He has this note, that note, this rhythm, has so many minutes out, and then he comes back in. The drummers have this, the violins have that. Each one has their own line. If we were to do the analogy of a play, each actor has their own line, but they don't have anybody else's line.
I know. So how do they know when the violins are through?
Well, they play,
they look at
and
you?
when they're through, they're through. And then they'll count 1 and 2 and 3 and come in again. And my job, I have the complete
you have it all.
score. So
right.
I have the piccolo to the string bass part and everything in between.
Right.
And my job is to encourage, to ask them to play softer, to do this, to be a traffic cop. Don't come in now, come in now. So my job is the overall, the total artwork. Theirs is their specific piece of the artwork.
I think that's going to be very helpful when you look at it. And then that all comes together, and you're the person that's bringing it together. One thing that you started with the California Philharmonic is music, martinis, and the maestro.
Right.
What is that?
Well, that's a chamber music series. We're very proud of it. I'm not a formal lecturer. That's not my task. I'm a person that carries on conversations, whether it's with you today,
yes,
or whether it's with 5,000 or 6,000 people during our concerts in the summer or at Walt Disney Concert Hall. I try to just speak with people, not lecture at them. So we have set up something that might be like a Las Vegas nightclub. It's in an over 100-year-old historical place. And it's very much the way chamber music was originally intended to be done. And there'll be a little round table and 4 to 6 people sitting around it. They'll have martinis or coffee or tea or Coca-Cola. I'll come on, I'll talk about the composers, the instruments, the music that they're going to listen to. The musicians will come out, they'll interface with me, and then there'll be a proper concert. Now, this particular, I don't know when the show is going to air, but on the 13th, we're doing something very unusual. And Richard Todd, who's a world-renowned French horn player, a distinguished professor at USC and now at Indiana University, he's our first horn player with the Cal Phil. And his first job after going to USC, I might add, was with the New Orleans Philharmonic. And he not only played classical music in New Orleans, but he studied jazz as a young 20-year-old kid. So he is going to be playing Bach on the first half of the chamber music concert, and with a string bass, jazz on the second half.
Oh, so he'll be doing both of them at your music, martinis, and the maestro. So you pull it all together.
Bach to bebop.
That's great. That's so good. I'm so glad you came and explained some of this stuff, because it seemed technical, and yet you made it so easy for us.
Well, it is technical, and it is wonderful, because just like with food, you don't have to know a thing about how the chef prepared it to enjoy it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching this part of the show. We'll be right back with Val Zavala. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with Val Zavala, who was born and raised in Southern California. She graduated from Chula Vista High School and went to graduate from Yale with a Bachelor of Arts in Latin Studies and earned a master's in journalism at the American University in Washington, D.C. And tell me how a woman, a girl at that time in high school, could get out of Chula Vista and get to Yale.
Right. Well, good old affirmative action, although it wasn't old at the time when I was graduating. I was graduating high school, Hilltop High, in 1973, just as the affirmative action programs were getting off the ground.
But for what?
So they were, my father's from Mexico. They were recruiting and looking for minorities, and it was just total luck. I would never in my wildest dreams have thought of applying to an Ivy League school.
How did you get there? I mean, did they come for you,
Yes,
or
they
did the
literally
recruiters?
Yeah, they sent a little postcard. I got a postcard in the mail saying, if you'd like to learn more about Yale University, please come to this, meeting.
Oh, so they did.
Yes, they recruited, because they would go to the counselors and they would say, what minority students do you have that have certain GPA, et cetera, and they would get the names and the addresses. And so you go to a meeting, and lo and behold, I ended up applying.
So was anyone in your family college educated?
My father was.
Oh, he was.
Yes.
So that was.
My father was. He went to Northwestern on the GI Bill.
Oh, so that wasn't a new thing then.
Not
to
terribly,
your family.
no. My mother didn't. She would have loved to have gone to college, but she couldn't afford it during the Depression. So.
I see. Now it opens up a little bit better, because you think that if you come from a background where they don't even know what college is, it makes it more difficult, even if it's affirmative action, and
Right.
even if they're coming after you. But did you always want to be a journalist? Did you go there?
No. Again, a complete surprise. I'd never entered my mind all through college. I majored in Latin American Studies, wanted to go into Peace Corps, International Development.
Oh, that's what you were going to do.
And then
I
it wasn't
see.
until after I graduated that journalism dawned on me, and I ended up going to journalism school.
Well, did you write for papers?
Nothing,
Magazines?
zero, nothing. No, never walked into the college radio station, never wrote for my high school paper, never wrote for the Yale Daily News, zero, nothing. And of course, they didn't have journalism programs and communication programs then like they do now.
So when you were in college, you still weren't writing anything?
No. It was Latin American Studies, a lot of political science and history and Spanish, and I was going to do international development.
So did you ever join the Peace Corps?
No, I didn't. I got sidetracked to journalism school. I promised myself when I'm age, 65 or 70, I'm going to go do Peace Corps, darn it.
You can go now.
You can. Still can. Doesn't matter how old you are.
Well, we have you as the VP of News and Public Affairs at KCET. You've been there many, many years. I don't know.
20.
20 years. What did you do before KCET, and how did you get there?
Yes, I was the classic commercial television news reporter, the person standing out there on the street, doing the live shots, covering everything from missing kids to St. Patrick's Day parades to, district attorney press conferences, just the general assignment news reporter.
So how did you get that job?
After graduate, I went to journalism school,
right.
And in broadcasting, they had a broadcast sequence at American University. And then I got my first job as a researcher in WBAL in Baltimore. And then I realized, oh, gee, I think I'd really like reporting. So you put your little tape together. You're very amateur, of course. And you get a job. At least not so much these days, but certainly when I was starting, you always have to go to a small town.
I think.
You make all your mistakes in a small town. So my small town was San Luis Obispo.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
So you came back to California,
Yes,
and you found a small town, and you started
there. And then the medium town was Fresno, and then the large town was San Diego, and then when I came to LA, that was my first public television job, thank goodness.
So everything else was commercial television.
Commercial.
KCET is public television. You did 16 years of Life and Times.
That's right.
What kind of a show was that?
That was it went through many iterations, but it was basically a public affairs show and then later a news magazine, but looking at Southern California and in particular Greater Los Angeles, because there is such a dearth, such a scarcity of quality information, serious, in-depth look at issues that are complex. And so we were filling that niche for many, many years.
But when you came out of commercial TV, did you have to go there and audition? How did you get the job?
My first job at KCET was a reporter. So I had 6, 7 years experience as a reporter, and so when they were looking for a reporter, this was back in 1987, I had a very good resume, and so I started as a reporter, and then I worked my way up, producer, executive producer, VP, anchor, so forth.
Did KCET bring you to LA?
Yes.
That was a way to get here.
That was my first time experience. Yeah, I'd avoided LA. The Southern California bias against Los Angeles, I was brought up with that. But lo and behold, here I am, and now I love it.
And you've been here for so long.
It's great.
So you anchored Life and Times, is that right?
Yes.
You've also you produced it.
I love a variety of things.
What does an anchor do? It doesn't have to be in news.
No, an anchor or a host doesn't have to be a traditional newscast. It can be a news magazine, a public affairs show. Sometimes they say host, sometimes they say anchor. It kind of depends on your preference.
Oh, it just depends.
Yeah.
So Life and Times was awarded 21 LA Emmys and 30 Golden Mikes, besides all of the other awards that it got. And who chose the shows for you?
Well, when I was there, the last couple of years that we'll talk about, because it went through a lot of changes. But the last 2.5 years, it was a field-based news magazine. And we had a very small staff, and we had 5 nights of television to fill, and you know what that's like.
Yes.
So ideas came from everywhere. We weren't picky. We weren't hierarchical. It came from an intern. It came from our producers. It came from people in the station, emails, press releases, newspapers, magazines, people who call. Any ideas that we knew would fit the bill, we looked into.
And who were they giving it to? You and who else?
Me, Linda Burns, our
like 3
producer.
or 4 people?
Yeah, exactly. They called my secretary. They called Vicki Curry, our producer. They called our researchers.
So 3 or 4 people were culling this information.
And checking their emails. I mean, it's a big, huge funnel, and all the ideas that come in just flow right through.
And then who has the final word on any of
Well,
that?
the final word was mine, but I have to say that it got to be, we had such a fast pace that I didn't always, and first I was out doing my own stories and reporting, so I wasn't always around to give the approval to a story.
Oh, I see.
But Linda Burns, who is our supervising producer, she knows the show so well, and the people knew the show so well. They knew what would fit and knew wouldn't. And they, you know, 99% of the time, their choice and their approval would have been mine.
When you came to public TV, tell us what public TV is.
It's the one at last remaining independently run and operated broadcast or station, in this case in Los Angeles, on the spectrum. I mean, when we look at everything else, it's the only one that is not driven by ad revenues.
I was going to say no
It's
commercials.
Right. Well, yeah,
Are there commercials?
They're enhanced underwriting, as we like to call them. But yes, so we do get support from corporations who buy spots, and we also have foundation support. We have a little bit of tax money, but not much, only about 7%. The majority, like 52% of all our funding comes from our members.
Is that right?
Yeah, our subscribers.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And so we're a nonprofit. We depend on those philanthropic dollars to come our way, and so we don't have to be beholden to advertisers.
So
nor are we owned by some big corporation, one of the big 6 mega media giants.
You're a VP over at KCT, Public Television. Do you have to go out and scrounge for funds to get people to come in, to get supporters, to get underwriters?
We have a development department.
Scrounge.
They might call it that. No, we have people who are assigned to foundations, individual giving, member services, subscriber services. And so there are people whose job it is to do that. I certainly participate when it comes to writing grants and so forth, but it's not my main job.
But don't they send you out and say, oh, you're so charming, go talk to this group of women, or go talk
well,
to
that's
this?
Separate. That's my community activities. Yes, I do that.
But that's really making a base, isn't it?
It can lead to donations, and we like that. But in terms of like those big grants from foundations, those are prepared by a separate development department. But in the very last stage, I may meet them and so forth and so on.
Right.
But it's not my prime job.
So do you, the first time I ever met you, you were teaching for public television. I mean, I took an editing class. It was probably as a favor to someone.
Right.
I know. And
yes.
You said something like 1 minute of TV time took an hour to produce or to edit. Is that right?
That would not be unusual. Now in news, when you crank it out really fast, that's not true. You know, you can do you can edit for the night, like if you're on a deadline for the 6 o'clock news, you can edit a minute in probably half hour.
Oh, but if you're doing, but as we were talking about, you were talking about the editing process and how long it takes to do it. Now with computers, is it different?
It doesn't save time, it just gives you more choices.
It doesn't?
Yes. No, it doesn't. It still takes as long, but the difference is that you can go back and change your mind and make all sorts of changes without having to re-edit. It's just like, it's the difference between a typewriter and a Word program. So you can it takes just as long, but you can make changes more easily.
We talk about getting a break. Is it easier to get a break in public television or in commercial television?
I would say in certain ways commercial, because there's so much more commercial. I mean, look, for every one public television station in any given city, there's 6, 7, 8. So there's so many more jobs in commercial.
You never wanted to go back to commercial TV? I mean, you've been at KCT a long time.
Yeah, a long time. it's inconceivable for me to go back to commercial, and the reason is all I have to do is turn on the local news and watch, and I say, I'm so glad I'm not there. I've been there, I've done that, I'm so glad I'm not there.
Why? Because it's so broken up, or
No,
because it's
just,
so wish-washed?
you know,
It's
no,
just washed over?
No, I have no interest in standing in front of, you know, a building where 2 hours earlier some city council meeting happened, and they're just, it's a totally superfluous live shot. You know, it's so silly. And, or covering crime, it does not interest me anymore, you know, or in Los Angeles, the dominance of celebrity coverage
what
is
about
crazy. No interest. I'm really celebrity impaired and proud of it. So, no, I'm very happy to be at public television where you can take a little time.
We talked about going back and doing Latin studies, and do you speak Spanish?
I wish I spoke fluent. I have a good, solid conversational Spanish.
Well, you've gotten some top Hispanic American awards in your work, and did you ever do a show in Spanish?
No, because most of public television is English, you know. But of course, you know, we have the new public television channel is Spanish. There's a specific Spanish television. But no, I'm not quite that good at Spanish. So the awards that we've gotten from the various Hispanic groups are for the quality of the coverage of the Latino community.
Oh, I see,
yeah.
I see.
So I use my Spanish to when I have to, but I'm not good enough to be
on air?
No, I'd be terrible with the past participles and all that.
So when we talk about anchoring, you told us a little bit about what anchoring is. You also executive produce. What is that?
Executive produce means that you are in charge of the overall look, pacing, content of the show. And I've done that somewhat, although it's really best not to be on air and be executive producer because you need those fresh eyes and objective viewpoint.
So it's like a director in a way, more director?
Well, your director is your technical person in the control room.
I see.
An EP is really the person who conceives the show, says that piece is too short, too long, we need a bumper here, we need new graphics, we need music. This show needs, you know, that piece should be 5 minutes, not 7 minutes. I mean, they really do construct the entire show.
And documentary producer, that's pretty
documentary
simply.
producer, that's where you take 6 months to 6 years to longer to do an in-depth, whatever, hour, 2 hours.
6 years?
Oh yes, some documentary, like when you follow, say, if you're many documentary makers might follow the life of a child or a person, and it can go on and on and on, or it can be very, you know, done quickly. So that's a whole nother side of
We
production.
can go on and on and on and on too, Val. I'm
Yes.
so glad you came today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Nice
I really
to see
enjoyed
you.
it. Thank you.
And thank you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017, and the email jaquinn1@aol.com. JAQINN1. Bye. Thank you.
Well, you've been doing this longer than I have.